This is Printed and Pressed. I'm Chris.
And I'm Andrew.
And we're going to pause for just 1 second because apparently Twitch didn't like my title. So I'm just going to try a new idea and see what happens. Let's try it now.
Amateur hour, folks. Amateur hour.
Let's try it now. It still doesn't like the title.
Well, who gives a shit about?
I do, because we created it today. We might as well try it. Let's see what the heck is wrong with the title. Maybe
Chris, you're concerning yourself about 0 viewers.
I'm just trying to see if we can get it. I'll give it one more shot and we'll see what happens. What is wrong with the title?
Nothing.
All right, I'm just gonna delete half of what's in there. 1 second.
I mean, either Hillbilly or JD Vance. One of the two, Chris, is the problem with the title.
You might be right about that, actually. Sadly.
One of the two.
Let's try.
I don't think elegy is within Twitch's vocabulary. So
I don't even know what we should define that word because I think that's important.
I don't think that's within Twitch's vocabulary. So
let's see if it'll let me go live now. I think I just used an invalid character. Oh, it still doesn't like it? What the heck? What am I doing wrong now? All right, let's try one last. It could be. Oh, maybe. You think so?
Yes. And also, just for your knowledge, Chris, elegy is a form of poetry that expresses grief, sadness, or loss.
All right. Well, I changed it to say hillbilly with ones in it. We'll see if it'll let it fly. I would be shocked if that was the reason. If it's literally because of hillbilly, that's gonna make me mad. Like, really, guys? Like, that's what you have a problem with? That's stupid.
We're starting off strong.
We really are. We really are. Somebody pointed out to me that if JD's name was like Andrew David Vance, then he'd be Advance. I mean, that would be legit, wouldn't it? I mean,
that would be kind of funny. He really
still doesn't like. Holy cow! What's
it doesn't like JD Vance? Then
you think that's what it is?
Yeah, it's gotta be JD Vance, bro.
There's no way.
It has to be. There's no way elegy is the reason.
I mean, that would be ridiculous too. All right, I'm gonna delete. All right, we're just gonna do. What can I call it instead of hillbilly? What if I just space out hillbilly? Maybe it's the all caps.
No, right, it doesn't like Vance. I'm going with Vance. Money's on Vance. Change the Vance.
You think so?
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna give this one more shot. Why doesn't it like that title? I'm gonna try it on this side. Let's see if I can edit it on here. Okay, let's see.
Well, for 0 viewers, this is already becoming a little tedious, Chris.
You're not wrong.
Screw Twitch. We ain't thoughts.
Well, I mean, that's true, but still. All right, let's see if that fixed it. Done. Ha! This may conflict with Twitch's moderation policy.
Which one?
Well, let's see if I'm gonna delete Vance and see if that fixes it. I would laugh so hard if you're right. Okay, it doesn't. I don't think it likes hillbilly.
I told you hillbilly first, and then I'm like, maybe Vance. Like, what? I'm about to be proven right.
Okay, it'll take hillbilly
without Vance.
If you space it out.
Oh, okay.
Hillbilly Elegy by JD Vance. All right, now let's try it. Now let's see if it'll do it. Hey, we did it. We're live on Twitch. You just had to space out the words Hill and Billy.
For 0 fans.
Who cares? Whatever. All right. So I'm apologizing ahead of time. I'll delete that off the audio, whatever. But I really wanted to,
Chris, make it a clip.
Me trying to thwart the Twitch's moderation policy. Yeah. That'd be a good. Actually, that would be a good clip. That would make a really good clip, actually. Okay, sorry.
We saw the clip the last week episode too, but
I just haven't had time.
I know.
All right. Let's see. Let's make sure Rumble's actually pretty good for us. So we should probably make sure Rumble's good to go too.
It's good.
You already checked it?
It says it's good. got a little check mark there. It's right.
Yeah, that doesn't always mean anything. Okay, good. Twitch, Rumble, and YouTube. So we got kicked off of Twitter because Elon changed the rules on how to live stream. I might bring us back on there here soon. We got to pay like $3 a month or whatever to live stream on there. I don't know. We'll see. But we also have the Twitch now. So there you go. If you want us to stream on Facebook, you got to like the Printed and Press Facebook page. There's 3 of you that liked it. Yeah. We need like 100 to stream on there. So
I mean, in fairness, Chris, even I haven't liked that because, Facebook. Like.
And nobody would know if you did or didn't because all of the likes are anonymous because we know our audience. We know our audience.
But I'm not deceptive like that, Chris. Come on.
Anyway, so what are we talking about today?
Hillbilly Elegy.
Which is probably going to get us kicked off of all these platforms, except Rumble.
Probably
Rumble
causes a lot of strong opinions.
The subtitle is A Memoir of Family and Culture in Crisis by none other than J.D. Vance. And this is before he launched any political career.
Yep.
This book originally launched in 2016, and then I believe the version with the afterword that I read was like an updated version in either 2018 or 2020. I don't know which.
Well, it was clearly after Trump won election.
Well, yeah, because he talks about Trump a little bit, but and about how he had come around to the whatever his platform is, which obviously he did if you've been watching the news.
Yeah.
But anyway, we just figured it'd be fun to cover this book since he's actually, relevant and the algorithm is enjoying his name for a short period of time.
Algorithm whores for the week. Just accept it. It's innocent fun, folks. Innocent fun.
It is. There's nothing.
You might get canceled still. It's whatevs.
Yeah, I mean, our Twitch account will probably be done after today, so Twitch won't.
Who cares about Twitch? Let's be honest.
Jeff Bezos, he cares about Twitch.
Yeah, but he sends rockets that look like up into space.
Oh, are you talking about that? Interesting member.
Dr. Evil at best, it's
$1 million.
Yeah, it looks more like Enos.
Oh my gosh. Right. Anyway, so what's funny is like, depending on where you're from in the Midwest, you might find a lot of things where you're like, oh my family might be hillbillies, or you might just be like, wow. But let's go through it piece by piece.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. In general, the Midwest has more hillbilly than it's willing to admit, even without the Appalachian Scots-Irish.
Well, the other aspect of that is like you might go into a random Midwest town and people have Southern accents and you're just like, what the heck? Because the accent doesn't match the area. And usually that's how you can tell if you've got like people who've migrated up to that part of the Midwest.
Here's the thing though, even without that, as a native-born Michigander, there's a large segment that is French Trapper.
And those guys were
origin. Yeah. And I think French Trapper also classifies as hillbilly, a different way of hillbilly.
Not the Scots-Irish version.
Maybe not as extreme hillbilly as far as the violent portion goes, but it's still hillbilly.
I thought that the term hillbilly comes from the idea of like the Irish
redneck,
Scottish hills.
Redneck. It's redneck,
and that's why he refers to the Scots-Irish hillbillies.
Yeah, it's fine. We'll say redneck because it lacks the hills.
Okay.
I would say that the French Trapper origin has an equal parts of a lot of the negative habits, but without the violent portion.
Yeah, we'll get into that. So So the dedication of this is to his mama and papa, his very own hillbilly Terminators. And there's a reason why he called them that. But I think we should start right with the first chapter because it kind of gives you a backdrop and the introduction as well. But it gives you a backdrop of the style of family he's from.
Yeah, I did a terrible job of taking notes besides things that like spoke to me. I'll be completely honest. So like
he basically just talks about how varied the experiences of the family are.
Would we be better off? Yeah, I was going to say like instead of trying to do chapter by chapter, should we just try to do like the flow of a summary flow
Sure.
trajectory.
So he starts out just kind of explaining the backdrop of his family. He talks about how people who migrated out of Appalachia tend to be more successful than people who stayed in.
Yeah.
And then he talks about all of the male figures because his dad's not a part of his family to start the book.
He also talks about the exploits of the
like
the family, the behaviors.
We'll call it hillbilly legends.
The antics.
Because like there's these stories, and I'll be honest, I've heard some stories similar to this in my lifetime.
Trust me, I've heard some crazy shit in my family too.
He talks about like all the times where somebody could have or should have or did or
gone
didn't
to jail,
or committed a crime, up to and including murder.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on here, but the main aspect of this intro is to tell you that his mama and papa moved out of Jackson, Kentucky, and into Middletown, Ohio. That's right.
Yes, sir.
And when they moved there, the idea was to get away from the hillbilly culture and forge their own way.
Well, it was a move for the better opportunity, the career opportunity, because
they were starting a family.
Yeah, these mills, these factories were recruiting people from Appalachia to come move to the Midwest for the factories, right? It's almost it's a similar concept to the migration out west. It's all of those things.
Yeah, like there were jobs. They put out like, hey, this area has people that are probably going to work for lower wages, but still living wages. Yeah. And they said, hey, here, bring your whole family.
Well, there also wasn't enough people in the Midwest per se.
True. And that's a reason why you would import workers.
Yeah.
So they went to Kentucky, Tennessee, all the different places where, a bunch of guys in the backwoods need to work.
Yeah.
And there you go. So then they wind up with essentially, like you've heard it before, people will just add the word Tucky to places to describe the people that live there. So like,
yes, sir.
He calls it Middle Tucky, and I'm like, okay, I've heard these kinds of stuff.
I've heard that about places in Michigan.
Right, exactly. So that's what I'm saying. Like there's plenty of places that can relate to that terminology of adding Tucky to a town because you know that the people that live there now came from Kentucky or otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so like the whole idea is the intro is you learn about his mama and papa, and they moved out there. They had three kids. The oldest one's Jimmy, and he moved to California, became some kind of tech whiz or something.
Actually successful.
Pretty successful.
Successful enough to fly him and his sister out there. To visit, fly JD Vance and his sister to move out there for a summer and then contemplate just having them stay there. So clearly had enough money.
And then there's the second sister, which is Aunt Wee, right? That's what he calls her.
Wee, yeah.
And then his mom.
French. They're Scots-Irish folks.
And he kind of talks about the disordered relationship of his mama and papa.
Yeah.
Where they have a lot of issues.
I mean, Papa is an alcoholic for a good portion.
Good chunk of the book, yeah.
Yeah, good chunk of his early childhood of the parents and everything.
The mama and papa stay together marriage-wise, but have their own houses each.
Yeah. Dysfunctional. Let's just say that.
I mean, they had to thrive in the dysfunction in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
But he has a good enough job. I mean, but that also says something. He's got a good enough job that they can afford two houses.
Let's say this. He's a functional drunk.
Yeah, pretty much.
Right? He's a high-functioning alcoholic.
It creates a family dynamic where the kids don't want to be there once they're old enough to get out.
But also, let's just point out that Mama is volatile.
Well, yeah, he talks about his mama being relatively volatile throughout the book.
I mean, she's
she at some point becomes kind of the anti-hero with the redemption arc.
Yeah, I mean, as far as her volatility goes, though, let's be honest. Every stereotype about a Latina fits her perfectly. Like,
okay.
You know what I'm talking about?
No.
No.
I disagree with this entirely.
You disagree? She lit this mother effer on fire, Chris.
Allegedly.
Not allegedly. He straight up says she lit him on fire.
Oh, that's right.
When he passed out on the couch.
That's
she
right.
Came in there.
But that's just like violent woman. That's not necessarily anything
passion.
to do.
That's called considered passion if it's a certain demographic.
Fair enough. Whatever. I disagree with your
she
generic
straight up
title.
lit the grandfather on fire, dude.
I'm not disagreeing with you being that she's volatile. I just don't understand the stereotype you're trying to apply here.
Oh, because that's the thing where if they get really pissed off with you, they might just cut your off. So that type of volatility. She literally lit this dude on fire, dude. Like
yeah, but he survived. It's all good.
because of the children.
Anyway, this gives you some ideas as to what's going on here between this family. But basically, the idea that he's getting to is that despite his mom being a very smart person, it's like you can take the hillbilly out of Kentucky, but you can't take the hillbilly out of the person.
I mean, what you quickly realize, we're skipping ahead a little bit with this statement, but like the brother and the sister had far better coping mechanisms with their upbringing than JD's mom did specifically. Like they actually had life work out for him because they knew how to cope better. Whereas his mom was very much the like flee mentality instead of fight. And when you don't have any fight in that type of world, you turn to escapism. And she does that in abundance throughout this book with drugs, alcohol, whatever it is. She's very much into escapism. I would describe it as.
You're talking about the mom or the
mom for not mama, but like JD's mom.
Yeah, I mean, really, the second these kids turned 18, they were out the door. That was the idea. At least that was what their plan was.
And the women were all pregnant. So
both of the women.
Yeah, by the time they were 18, both pregnant.
Well, 19. His mom was 19 when she was pregnant. And that was when she had Lindsay, his older sister.
Yeah. I mean, before they made it to college, they were pregnant, is the description.
Yeah, they did not spend a lick of time in college not having a child in tow.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's the backdrop. So then she goes through relationships and issues. And then JD's born at some point. And then as they're going through this problematic family dynamic, he's back and forth between the new man that's in his mom's life, or they're living with Mama and Papa, or they're living in a house right down the road from Mama and Papa.
Also, it's really twisted too, because like his father kind of got coerced into putting him up for adoption. Yeah. So like he also has a random legal father figure that doesn't stay in the life very long.
Right.
So he has his biological father, a temporary legal father that is then gone, and then a bunch of random dudes that his mom is currently with. She has like how many guys she marries in this book? I swear
at least 3, 4, if not 5.
At least 4, upwards of 5.
3 named, for sure. 3 named at least.
I thought there were 4 named, but that
could have been
at least 4.
Well, and then the one part, like she comes home and she says she's getting married, or she got married, and they're like to Matt, and he goes no to Ken.
Random dude.
They're like,
I
what?
Just met him last week.
And it's like these are like windows into the life this child was growing up
man.
in. And
it's
like,
crazy.
Oh my goodness.
That's crazy.
So the thing that I want to bring up though is once he does meet his dad, there's a redemptive arc there, which is nice. And like he gets to know his dad and his half siblings, and additionally you get the good, like the consistent men in Kentucky that were still there that he would visit with. He still has male figures in his life because the extended family is still close, which is good.
No,
like,
extended family is the only redeeming quality that I found in this entire book for Appalachian culture.
I mean, there's a tough grit aspect to him too.
It's the main redeeming one because a lot of them lose that tough grit the second their second generation is born outside of Appalachia.
Oh, I mean, no disagreement there.
Yeah.
And you get a lot of like deadbeat dad aspect to this book. Like, for example, he talks about all the kids behind the window. There's like 8 kids, and the guy
Yeah,
sitting on the front porch.
I was gonna say too, though, that even the Blanton man uncles still went around with the grandfather to like kind of screw the grandmother a little bit, in the sense of like they still went chasing women and shit.
You're talking about Mama's brothers.
Yeah. They still came over, visit JD's grandfather, and they would go out and kind of chase women together and stuff. Like, he kind of describes his things that because his grandfather was friends with them before everything, there was a lot more tolerance for his
bad activities.
Yeah, versus if he was a random dude that married her type of thing.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. You turn a blind eye to close friends a lot of times.
But they're all very emotionally erratic, Chris.
Yeah, I mean
every single one of them is extremely volatile as a person. There's no reconciling how volatile these people are.
Like they clearly their version of a good time does not match my version of a good time.
Well, despite that, just the way they handle disagreement, or some setback, does not jive with me at all. Like, goodness, okay. He describes the time his uncle Jimmy went to a store, right? A pharmacy store at the time, because they're old as dirt.
That's not his Uncle Jimmy. It was you're right. It was
Uncle Jimmy.
It was Uncle Jimmy.
He went to a pharmacy store to play with a toy. But the toy is deemed expensive by the owner. So he doesn't want kids playing with it while in the store, because they might break it. So he kicks him out, right? Mama and Papa, they lose their proverbial shit.
Crap out of
and they start destroying the freaking store. They destroy the toy, all sorts of shit. Now, I'm not going to lie. Maybe I'm an extremist on this. But, god darn it, both of them deserve to be shot by that shop owner. I'm sorry. Like, I have zero tolerance for that bullshit. There's zero excuse for that uncivilized behavior. And in my book, that's looting and terror. And the shop owner, in his rights, could have shot both of them, and I'd have been okay with it.
Do I think that a shop should kick a little boy out on the first offense?
No, it's not the first
Probably offense. Not.
One, I can't claim that little boy is honest, given he's a hillbilly.
I'm not saying anybody in this story is honest, but I'm just saying, like, okay, so if you take it at face value, if all he was doing is playing with it and he really wanted it, then what the shop owner should say is, hey, if you want this, go get your parents and we'll let you buy it.
That's fair.
That's what should have happened. Instead, shop owner sees Dirty Jimmy or whatever the heck he has a nickname of.
Kicks him out. Yeah.
Kicks him out and says, don't come back. Like, that's so I can see why there's anger there, because there's a sense of pride and ego that's been attacked. And while I disagree with the method of solving that, I could see why
they came in and started breaking shit, Chris.
Right. Like that's what I'm saying. The solution was not that. That's not the solution.
Private property.
The solution is you go in.
Must be protected at all costs, Chris.
The solution is you go in there and you chew.
Functional society,
listen to me. I'm not done yet. Instead of doing what they did, you go in and you chew the guy out and you say, like, you know, don't kick my boy out. Tell him what to do. You know.
Yeah.
That's the real solution. But I digress. That's not what happened. That's not how the story goes in the book.
My comment is simply this. Seeing as Mama and Papa were described as gun-toting crazies half the time, JD is lucky to freaking exist because in my book of morality, Mama and Papa could have been shot at that stupid pharmacy store, and I think justice would have been served. That's all I'm saying. And his Aunt Wee and Ma were not born yet. So
yeah, I think you're right. I don't think they were yet.
Yeah. So JD is lucky because I feel like if they behaved that way in Kentucky, they might have been killed. Just saying. The level of
the other aspect though is who knows if Jimmy would have got kicked out of that store in Kentucky. I mean, they might have recognized the behavior more. So
no.
You have
the
a
problem
distinct...
is playing with a toy that's very expensive. The real problem is that toy didn't exist in Kentucky. Let's be real. That toy did not exist in Kentucky.
I don't know about that, but
no one could afford it in Kentucky.
I don't know
It did not
about
exist
that.
there.
But
that's a fair bet.
Listen. The story itself is full of problems. Okay, there's holes in the story.
This is a minor one, but yes.
Okay. Anyway, so once you get past the explanation of Mama, Papa, the Blantons, the Vances, the aunt and uncle, and mom, then you get into JD living with his mom, and at some points in time, his Mama, Papa. His mom is very volatile as well. In fact, she tends to take out... It seems like she hits JD a little bit.
She's extremely violent, volatile,
and lots of threats,
threatening to kill him at some points. Like, he's the only reason she never went to actual jail.
Because he didn't take her to court.
He didn't testify properly because the family didn't want her to go to jail.
But that also brings up another point, and one of the things they talk about in the book, and it actually does a really good job in the movie, is that if JD tells the truth about his mom, there's no guarantee that he gets to go and live with other family members.
That's true.
Because the system's kind of backwards, where like if you don't have a foster license, at least where they were at in Ohio, apparently if you don't have a foster license, you can't raise your own grandkid.
Right. We should touch more on that later.
We will, but it's an important point to point out, because JD, like, there's value in protecting his family if he wants to remain with his family.
Yeah.
So even though he's dealing with a hard situation, the government's about to force him into a harder one.
We'll expand on it later, because I feel like we're going to have a lot more back and forth on this. Just the general thoughts afterwards of the whole package. But this is an example of where the Midwest culture that existed before the hillbillies and the hillbilly culture don't necessarily take and grow together to take the best of both worlds. It's literally conflict from the very beginning, and probably the worst of both worlds that prevails. But yeah, that's how I would look at it, at least at this moment in time. I don't know if you agree or disagree with that, Chris, but
we'll get into it later. Into it later. I think there's a big issue when you have a culture imported to another area, no matter what that culture is. Either you have some version of assimilation of good things, or you end up with two distinct cultures living in the same area fighting each other. Yeah,
and this is very much a distinct culture situation.
Yeah, you've got like the idea is like you've got the VIP line at Cedar Point versus you've got the regular old Joes in the other line, right? You got the haves and have-nots, and nobody wants to intermingle. Anyway, let's keep going. So once you get past that, you get to JD with school and everything else, and you can tell that his mom cares about him, but at the same time can't get over her own issues in order to raise him well.
Okay. Let's just lay this out bare right from the get-go here. The mom's an extremely selfish, self-focused person.
Oh, yeah, she is.
She is purely self-focused. Like, when it comes to any issue, for example, when the grandfather dies, right? Papa dies.
She retreats into her shell.
No, it's not simply that she retreats. If she simply retreated, that would have been fine, bro. But the problem is, anyone else who grieves, she attacks. She tells her own children they can't grieve for him because they don't have the same level of sadness as her. Because
he was his dad, her dad.
Yeah, he was her dad, not theirs. And then she does the same shit for when Mama dies later on. And she does similar arguments throughout the thing of like how Mama is I'm your mom, not her type of thing, if it's an aunt or mama or whoever. So it's like the mom is so toxically trying to one up somebody in like the relationship category that is just like,
yeah, like at some point JD's about to lose it, especially after his mama dies.
He should have lost it. I'm sorry,
and
but like
Lindsay shut it down pretty well with. Let me see if I can find it, but it's something along the lines of. Here, let me see if I can find it real quick.
It basically calls her out for being a terrible mom.
Yeah, mama is just as much as our mom is your mom, or something like that, or even more mom does. But it's the thing you don't find out is mama didn't become such a good like maternal figure to the kids until after she screwed up with her own.
Well, I would argue that's more the case for Papa than Mama.
Yeah, I mean, but she says freely like, "Hey, I screwed up." And actually, if you watch the movie, they've added some lines that weren't in the book.
Oh, okay.
One of the lines is when JD is basically asked to like, "You need to man up." Yeah. The "man up" quote that may or may not be real, I don't know, but it's in the movie, so we'll just roll with it. She says like, "Your mom's not gonna be the matriarch of the family, JD. So like, you have to man up and take care of this family for me."
Yeah, that's not in the book. The thing I was going to add though is I think that this book does a great job of depicting what the fourth turning kind of tells us. You know what I'm going with this, right? Where grandparents and grandchildren have a special relationship.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, I would agree with that.
There's more empathy there. Like there's more of an understanding between grandparents and their grandchildren than there are parents and their children. Yeah, so like I think this book actually epitomizes that concept.
Well, not only that, but you get to see 4 generations of the family operating. Because you get the runaway mama papa because of the early teen pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have the next generation. They want the next generation to be better. But the next generation essentially rejects that. And then the next generation, the grandkids, finally it takes, and the grandkids wind up with good families. And
you mean the hero generation?
The hero generation. I think JD is a millennial.
He is. He's what, 40?
39.
39. So, wow, you couldn't just round up for me, guys. So yeah,
I only know that because there was a news article. It's like youngest VP ever or something.
Yeah, he's technically a millennial.
Skip right over Gen X for this election, huh?
Dude, Gen X sucks.
Anyway, so then you get into JD in like high school, and that's when Mama really takes over for the raising of JD, because the mom's kind of a lost cause at this point. She's in and out of rehab and drugs, and JD is
kind of worthless.
As a parent, she's really not doing the job.
Except for like being a trauma trigger, she's kind of worthless.
But then the mama takes control, and she's like, she basically like, ship up or ship out, kid. Like, get this figured out, because if you don't figure this out, you'll end up just like your mom.
If he didn't have his extended family, JD would have been screwed.
Oh yeah, like you can see the trajectory he was on right before it.
Well, if he had to stay with his mom instead of Mama, he would have been 0 projected future.
So yeah, basically what happens in the movie, and I don't think this actually happens in the book, but JD at some point gets into a car accident with his friends when they're all like smoking pot.
Oh,
and
that doesn't happen in the book, dude.
And that's when Mama comes in. This is while she's married to Ken, because Ken has the medicinal marijuana.
Okay, in the book, it's because JD smoked pot. It's about his mom's needing a clean piss
test.
Yeah.
Which, come on, Mom. Like, really? Like, that's gross.
Dude, like, come on. That's how much of a screw up his mom is that she needs him to piss in a cup for him.
But anyway, so like that situation plays out in a similar way, but it adds on the car accident that he remembers, or maybe they added for drama. But
for drama, because
who knows? I mean, that might really, like, a lot of the stuff he was consulted for the movie, so like, who knows?
That's fair. I mean, it's
so and then she buys the she skips her medicine to get him a calculator so he can excel in school. Like that's a cool mama.
Yeah.
And then she really does take control of his development, and like she's like, really shape up, dude.
Yeah,
And then
and then from there, I mean, he finds a teacher that he admires.
yep.
That's
And then he goes to
that's
the Ohio
important.
State.
No, he goes to the Marines.
Well, yeah, you're right. Marines
Because
first.
Ohio State, he's not ready. He realizes he's not ready when he graduates. He's
Which
too
good for
immature.
him recognizing that.
Right. So he needs to get his shit together. So he goes to the Marines, which he basically gets indoctrinated. I almost want to say indoctrinated into good habits,
Oh yeah,
into a better way of behaving and out a mindset and all that. Because he has some toxic shit in his past, right?
The
So
military can really help people like him.
yeah, when you have zero structure, zero orientation as a child, the military is probably the best place for you. And that goes beyond all social classes. That's really a youth thing, right? Um, but he does that. He gets through it. He doesn't do combat. He's more
He's
of
that
like
guy that goes out and
he's
helps
like a
with.
public relations type of Marine.
I mean, he still goes through all of basic, which is not easy.
Yeah, no, but his role is to like go kind of be more involved with like public outreach type of deal stuff. As far as like reaching out to the community there and stuff
It
like
did
that.
crack me up when he's talking about the rifle training or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Where they're like, the bulk of people who had fired a rifle before going to the military suck at it when they get into the military combat. But because of his good old papa, he could fire no problem.
Yeah. And then he gets out of there. He goes to Ohio State.
Well, his mama dies in the meantime.
Yeah, his mama does die. There's nothing too exciting while he's at Ohio State. He has a crazy ass schedule.
He gets involved in a lot of stuff.
Yeah, well, because he has to work while he's there. He then goes to Yale.
Goes to Yale because he needed the job.
Yeah, for law school, and then
you don't recognize the joke I was just telling you.
No, I didn't.
Okay, I'll tell this joke real quick because it's funny. So this guy's in a job interview, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, what's up with this 4-year gap in your resume? And he goes, I went to Yale. And they're like, oh, cool. Well, you're hired then. He goes, sweet, I needed the job.
Oh.
I love it. Anyway, let's go. So yeah, he goes to Yale, and that's where he meets he meets his wife, which he calls a spirit guide, and she had been at Yale since before undergrad.
Yeah.
So it's like she knows the place. Like
she kind of is the reason how he gets cultured for Yale to succeed.
Yeah, she really helps him a lot.
Because they start dating relatively early. He's still clueless about how certain things work societally. For an example in here is about when he goes to some interview dinner thing. He doesn't understand how to use all the silverware, so he goes out to the bathroom to call her and ask her.
They nailed that scene in the movie so well.
Did they?
Yeah, so that's like one of the opening scenes. He gets on the phone, he's like, I have no idea what all this stuff's for. And she's like talking through like, okay, the outside is for this, the inside, the closer you get, And then after they finish talking through the silverware, she goes, take your 2 hands, all right? Now flip them around and put them on your eyes. And he goes, what am I doing this for? And she goes, I can't believe you actually did that.
Goodness.
It's good. Dude, you should watch the movie. It's actually worth watching.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
So he does that. They end up eventually getting married. There's not a lot more to the story at this point as far as...
I mean, he gets into like a little diatribe about
he talks about
how America's...
Yeah, he talks about the importance of networking.
He talks about how like the hillbillies and various Midwestern towns are accused of racism for not liking Barack Obama, but it's really more related to, at least in his mind, it's related to the fact that they don't understand Barack Obama.
Well, it's not just that. They see America as not designed for them anymore.
Right. Like, so here's this elite president who has probably one of the best speaking voices of all time. Like Barack Obama has a great speaking voice. Yeah. He sounds very cultured in the way he speaks, and he sounds very smart in the way he speaks. which is something that a lot of Midwesterners can't relate to. So he's like pointing out, like, hey, it's not necessarily a race thing.
Speak for yourself, bud.
This is what JD says in the book.
I'm messing with you. Don't worry.
Anyway.
No. Okay. And then he also talks about how, well, he eventually goes back to Cincy, right? That's how he ends up.
Yeah.
They find a practice in Cincy. There's he starts just contemplating the issues of like, why is it that so few people have gone to somewhere like Yale from where I grew up?
And then he talks about how like nobody takes advantage of Pell Grants and stuff.
No, it's not just that though. It's one of those things where like there's not a lot of assistance for kids while they're in school, lower education versus getting to college. So many can't even make it to college. That's a huge issue. Besides that, though, he does also go into this. In this book, there's a whole tirade about welfare queens, that type of thing, where there's a lot of hillbillies who just live off the system. They complain about work, but in reality, they actually just quit work.
He talks about how the poorest and least active communities in America are. And he said that the only time he'd ever heard of a welfare queen was the hillbilly women who just didn't work and had tons of kids.
Yeah. I mean, he also talks about, he goes into a whole thing about traumatic events.
Yeah. The whole, it's what is it? Oh gosh. The ACE. I can't remember what that acronym stands for. Let's see. I'm going to find it real quick. ACE. Because that is an important piece of this, in my opinion.
About how many certain traumatic events people go through. ACEs.
Yeah.
Adverse childhood experiences.
There you go. Adverse childhood experiences. Like, here are some of the most common: is being sworn at, insulted, or humiliated by parents, being pushed, grabbed, or having something thrown at you, feeling that your family didn't support each other, having parents who were separated or divorced. It's a lot of America at this point. Living with an alcoholic or a drug user, living with someone who is depressed or attempted suicide, and watching a loved one being physically abused. Like, these are seriously big problems.
Yeah.
And then he talks about how like his wife scored a 0, right? A 10 is the worst. 0 is really good. And like another one of his family members scored a 0. I think Lindsay.
No, Lindsay didn't score.
No, Lindsay didn't score a 0. Who scored a 0?
Lindsay's husband scored a damn 0.
Oh yeah, that's right. Her husband. You're right.
No, yeah, this one. I know I score shittily on this, so it's whatever.
What? Oh my goodness.
I definitely score shitty on this. I know I do, but.
Oh, I see what you're saying now. Okay.
What?
No, I know what you mean now.
I have multiple aspects of
I was going to say, we've talked about this before, like offline. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, no, there's multiple there's plenty of, and that's just the common list. I mean, if you expand that damn list out to have the full 10, like, I might have a shit score.
I understand. Anyways, so I doubt I would score a 0, but I don't think I would score a 10. That's for sure.
No, I don't score a 10. But I probably score close to a 5.
Because like even with all the stuff that happens to him, I think he says he scores a 7.
I mean, that's a 7 right there.
No, Aunt Wee scores a 7. That's right.
He puts 7 of the 10 up there. I'm curious what the other 7 are.
I'm not. I don't want to know.
I'm curious what the rest of the 10 are, but I'm sure I score pretty damn high in general based just off that list. By high, I mean at least +3 something, at least 4 maybe. I don't know.
Anyway, the thing that, like, I guess the best part about this book in my mind is you see where he comes from, and it's pretty awful. Like, the circumstances of his upbringing are pretty bad. And then he molds that into something that isn't bad, something that's actually pretty admirable throughout his life. And he ends up going through one of the biggest Ivy League schools. Like, most hillbillies aren't going to the Ivy Leagues.
Right.
So like JD is an example of like what is it? What does he call it? Not class upheaval.
I don't
You know what I'm talking about?
No.
It's
Upliftment?
upward movement,
Upward mobility.
upward mobility. Yeah, he's a good example of like, if you really put the work in, upward mobility. It may not be always possible, but it is possible if you do the work that you could have upward mobility. The U.S. is not stagnant. There's no caste system here.
Right.
You're not stuck with what you're born with. You can make a name for yourself and move up in the world. And that's what keeps America, in my mind, that's what keeps America alive, is that you have opportunities if you know where to look.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, part of it is what created this whole situation, right? Which was them willing to move.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge aspect, right? Being willing to move. So
you have to uproot for the opportunity sometimes.
Yeah, and if you're not willing to move, you're limiting yourself so much. I mean, it does contradict some of the things that I might say later, in the sense that I do think extended family is important.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you can keep the extended family around, it's very valuable.
Yeah, but you do have to move for opportunity. You can't. It's like that right there is quintessentially America. Right. Is the willingness to move and pursue opportunity. The second you feel like you're above that, just moving, cutting ties and moving, you kind of stop being American, I think.
Well, America is a nation of immigrants, allegedly. Anyway, it's a place where if what you have isn't working, you have plenty of places to go.
Yeah.
And you just sometimes you got to take that jump.
I mean, frankly, every place in America, right, is people who move there for opportunity. If the opportunity has left, why do you feel like you can't move? Your ancestors moved.
That's how they got here, yeah.
That's how they got there. Like,
especially if you're Scots-Irish.
Yeah, they literally determined that their opportunity where they're at was better in this new location. So they moved to the better opportunity. The fact that some people feel like, oh, we took this new land, it's ours now, we're never moving. It's like, how stupid are you that you didn't learn a single lesson from your ancestors?
Well, yes. Like, here's the fact. The fact of the matter is you got to take care of your family. If you have a family, you got to take care of it. If the land you're living on isn't taking care of your family, it's worthless.
I mean, if you can't make a living where you're currently at, move. Straight up move. Like, okay, the property ain't worth shit and you can't sell it. Leave it. Like, straight up, just freaking leave it. Like, it's not a debate, really. Like, oh, the market's falling out from under these houses, so
that's a rich person argument.
Yeah, that's a rich person. It's like
if you have money, you can't have that argument if you don't have the money to have that.
Yeah,
argument.
Like the thing, the whole concept of like, oh, the market fell out from under me, so now it's like, okay, one, excuse me, who are you? Where are you entitled to this return that you think you are due? Like, no. You literally can't make by where you currently live. Your only option is to move. Who cares?
Sell the baggers and get out.
Who cares how cheap you sell the damn house for? One, also, this might come off insensitive, but when you do that, you're selling it possibly to somebody who might make better freaking use out of the property.
So you're gonna be insensitive. I pulled myself out.
No, I'm just saying. No, I'm just saying you might be selling it to somebody who can make better use of the property, which helps the people around you.
That's a good point. Yeah,
I've never understood this nonsense anti-gentrification crap.
Well, if people move into the area and increase the value, that's a good thing.
It is, because one, there's plenty of people who've moved into areas and reduced the value. No one there. I'm just saying, like, there's been plenty of cases where people moving in has reduced the value of property.
And we're talking about a merit-based value, because somebody who lets the house go, who lets the yard go, they're not helping the rest of the neighborhood at all.
No.
The people who move in and they take care of their grass, they do
and these same people who moved in, who didn't originally, like, let's talk specifically about the hillbillies that moved to the Midwest, right? Let's talk about them specifically. Oh, I lost.
There goes your camera. You said the wrong word. No, just kidding.
I said the wrong word. No, but like, let's straight up talk about the hillbillies.
Well, I guarantee you Twitch is going to cancel us after the stream.
I don't care. Okay, let's talk about the hillbillies specifically, right? So they moved into these neighborhoods, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, okay, they were invited there, whatever, but their culture that they brought with them, as soon as the factories went away and stuff, like, their kind of short time preference behavior did not help but do anything other than accelerate the decline, in my opinion, based off the reading I did.
To an extent.
Yeah,
I mean, the business not prospering didn't help either.
No, but the short-termedness of, like, not preparing for the future, not saving money, not really building up any assets doesn't help either. It's not like they're building up their own shops or anything. They're literally just living off the factory, and the second the factory's gone, there's no pivot. There's no desire to move away. They're now just...
That's one of the problems with the industrial towns, though, is it discourages a lot of that.
I get it. I'm just saying that there's no pivot to move from there. They just stayed there and let everything go decrepit. And then there's just this concept of, I'm entitled to stay here. It's my hometown. It's like, you literally just moved here a generation ago. Chill out.
Yeah,
if other people buy up now another group comes in to buy up the property and your property taxes go up because the value's going up as they try to gentrify the area, chill out. You are a migrant yourself. You are not it's not your damn community. It's not. I'm sorry. You literally moved here a generation ago. Chill out if another group moves the next generation. That's the thing that kills me with some of these Midwest towns.
I would argue that it is their town. No, it is their town. They've lived there 40, 50 years. That's where they live. It's their town. But you should welcome people that bring a positive change to your town.
My comment is simply this. They have as much entitlement to deny new entry and bitch about it as the people they complained about who didn't want them to move there in the first place. And boy, oh boy, do they love to bitch and moan about the people who didn't want them to move into their communities from who were there before. I'm just saying, like, the original Midwesters who didn't want the Southern hillbilly mentality coming into their neighborhoods.
What did you think about his discussion about Section 8 housing?
I think Section 8 housing should be controlled by the local city jurisdiction, not federal.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
I just thought the discussion, though, is like, if you put a whole bunch of Section 8 houses together, then you wind up with a community of essentially, you wind up with a permanent.
No, it's true. It's a valid argument.
But if you stick a bunch of Section 8 housing next to a rich neighborhood, you end up with a lot of crime.
Yeah, because technically, the biggest thing that causes strife is income inequality. That is,
it really does.
Noticeable. It's not necessarily
income inequality spans every gap of problems.
Yeah, it's the perception of what someone else has versus what you have that really causes the strife. So I see the merits to keeping Section 8 close to each other, but at the same time, Section 8, when you put all these people together, it is also a self-fulfilling prophecy that no one's bettering anything.
Exactly.
So,
that is a
you
problem.
need to find a way to layer everything. You need to like feather it so that it's a blend from 0 to 100.
And there needs to be encouragement for the people living in that type of housing to better their lives.
That, and you have to realize that you can never put Section 8 next to top tier.
No.
But you can put mid tier next to top tier.
You can.
So you need to figure out how to blend that from 0 to 100 without putting 0 next to 100.
You got to show people what they can aspire to, but you don't want them to feel so below that person near them that they want to rob each other. Like, for example, if you put my house next to Bill Gates's house, I would automatically hate that man.
Oh, no shit.
Even without knowing anything about him, I'd be like, look at this jerk with the giant.
Okay, but what else I'm trying to say, Chris?
1,000 square foot mansion.
What else I'm trying to say?
Private jet. No, I'm just kidding.
That's one of those things that should be 100% controlled by the local.
Yeah.
Section 8. The federal version. No, that's stupid. They got no picture of the community. They got
the other thing is
the strategy. It's a one size fits all thing. It's nonsense.
Who handled this type of housing back in the day? It wasn't the government. Charity. It was the charity, the churches.
But what did charity back in the day have over everything the federal government does? It's called knowledge of the community it serves.
Right. So you don't keep sticking the same terrible deadbeat dad back into a house.
It's not just that though. It's like, on paper, person A, person B look exactly the same. They look exactly the same.
There's nothing in it for the federal government to take care of these people.
But
the local people, though,
person A, person B have totally different mindsets that the community is aware of, right?
So, and the community can easily decide who's going to be
receiving what. Yeah. Where does the investment go?
Taken care of, right?
Yeah. It's one of those things where discrimination by the community is probably a little bit
discretion. Why don't we say discretion by the community?
Discretion and discrimination are kind of the same thing. But
I know, but discretion sounds better.
Fine. Fine. Discretion is the right word. Fine, Chris. But it's a similar concept.
Discretion is using good judgment. Discrimination is where you like specifically choose to.
Well, I was more so saying it from the term of you should be discriminating in your
decisions.
Decisions, yes.
Yeah, so discretion is still a better way to say it. Anyway.
Yeah, well, discretion, you have discretion, but when it's executed, it is discriminating. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
You know that I make a valid point.
Let's move on from this one. I guess
it's a valid point.
So the major theme in this book, the major theme is no matter where you come from, there is an opportunity for you to excel above where you come from.
Yeah. I think
and one of those things is like he talks about, okay, so here's a good one. There's the Christian parable that his grandma tells, right? The guy's in the house where it's flooding.
Yeah.
First thing comes by is
you
like
gotta help yourself.
Rescue vehicle. And he says, nah, God will take care of me. I don't need that. Then the flooding gets up to his second floor and a boat comes by and he says, nah, God will take care of me. I'm good. And then he gets up on his roof and a helicopter flies by and they offer him help. And he says, nah, I'm good. God will take care of me. And then the flooding takes him. And he goes up to the pearly gates and he says, God, why did you let me die? And he says, I sent a car, a boat, and a helicopter. You didn't help yourself. I mean, that is a perfect parable for this story. It's like there are exit routes to every bad situation, and you have to find them.
Well, I'll add one thing, and I think it's appreciated aspect of this story, so to speak. He sucked.
He sucked. Wow. Okay.
Until his mama. He sucked at life until his
That's
mama.
A clip. That's a clip. The best thing I can take from the story is he sucked.
Until well, let me caveat this.
Go ahead. I'm gonna keep laughing though.
Okay, he sucked until his mama took him in during
it sounds way too close to mama, and that's his mom. Mama.
I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit about this hillbilly nonsense. All right.
I do.
Okay, until she took him in during high school. He was on a road to nowhere the entire time until he finally got a situation that can only be described as what word, Chris?
Intervention. Stable does matter. People don't give a lot of credit to it.
Stability. A form of stability, a place that's reliable. So I think if you have to take away anything from this book, it don't matter who the hell you are. If you lack any form of stability, like a home base that's stable, you ain't going nowhere. Literally nowhere. Most likely. His story is an example of how stability at home can take a road to nowhere person and put them on a road to somewhere. Now, I ain't going to say that he didn't already have like a fighting spirit to things because he wanted to do better, and his mama made sure that he wanted to do better based off of how she kind of described that grit thing too. Like she tried to install grit and everything, but he couldn't really have that influence until living with her brought that form of constant stability. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, and I do think it is interesting that he changed his last name 3 times throughout the story. Like having a last name, the Vance
not
name,
by his choice.
No, I'm not saying that, but and actually what's even funnier is him and his wife both changed their name to Vance when they got married. That's what he says. Yeah.
Yeah. Why is that so weird? Because he wanted to make his name Vance.
No. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying like the only stability in his life came from the Vance family.
Yeah.
So of course, when you finally find your own stability, you take that with you.
I mean, that really just epitomizes the fact that his mama created the entire home life that he needed to succeed versus his mom who sucks.
Although it sounds like, so at the end of the movie, they give you an update on the various people that were in it. And his
mom is sober now for a long time.
6+ years at the time of the movie. So we're talking like 2020.
Yeah, I don't give a crap how sober somebody is. You ain't changing the mindset of an extremely selfish mindset. I just don't think you change that.
Well, so she has been, according to the movie, taking care of her grandkids. So I hope
different.
I hope she's changed.
That's still her her grandchildren. When I say selfishness, I'm talking about all that nonsense in the book about how like, why are you grieving? That's my
yeah.
Or like, you know what I'm saying? Like that nonsense.
But wasn't she already on drugs at that point?
She was on drugs 90% of this book, dude.
Well, she was a drunk until she discovered drugs. Because it wasn't until
destructively the same for both. She does heroin at the end, dude. Like,
yeah. I guess so, and this explains a lot of how like his thought process in regards to the war on drugs and stuff goes, because if you've dealt with those kinds of things in your family, you'll have a very different idea of how to handle drugs than somebody who has none of that in their family. I mean, wouldn't you agree? Like, if you've dealt with that firsthand with a family member, it changes the entire perspective of these things.
Yes and no. Yes and no. I would say personal opinion as someone who has not dealt with it, but like I've dealt with people who have their own quirks and shit. There's a certain level of self-responsibility there.
Oh, yeah, I don't disagree with that.
You feel the sympathies for him, you want what's best for him, but it's just like no amount of coddling will ever fix that person. And
that is exemplified in the situation where the grandma says, just piss in the cup for your mom and hopefully she'll change. It's like that right there is an enabling
I would
behavior.
refuse.
Like I get, well, but then he's torn again because if his mom gets caught doing that and she goes to jail, he's not living with his grandparents. So like he's stuck between that rock and a hard place.
Wait, as a kid who's under, okay, fine. As a kid under 18, I empathize. I understand. The second you're over 18, F it. I'm sorry. Like you take an F it approach. Personal opinion. You have to.
I mean, if it's your own mom, you probably still care.
You care. You don't coddle.
You don't coddle.
In fact, don't enable.
In the movie, they do that scene very well where he discovers his mom's trying to use in the hotel room. And he runs in, he takes that needle out of her hands, destroys it, and flushes it down the toilet. And he says, "Not again, Mom. Like, this is it. You're done. No more of this." And then he has people keeping eyes on her to keep her off the drugs.
I'll be completely honest. Maybe I have maybe it's just the Midwesterner in me. That's not as, I value extended family and all that shit, but not to a point of self-destructiveness.
And that's one of the things he struggles with in the movie, and they show that very well, where he's constantly torn back into this home life that he doesn't, it's not really part of him once he gets to Yale anymore, but he has to keep helping out.
Yeah.
That's a rock and a hard place because you don't want to abandon family, but at the same time, a family member that's not willing to help themselves.
Someone with addiction like that who refuses to actually take help seriously, they abandon you. It's not you abandoning them.
But it never feels that way. It never does. I'm telling you right now, it never feels that way. From the person who's dealing with it, you'll never feel like it's them. It's not them against you. Feel like it's you and them.
That's a perspective issue. That's a you issue, not a. That's not a.
I'm just letting you know, like the perspective. You're not going to feel that way if you're in that situation.
I'm just saying, dude.
Anyway, so what are some of those are the main takeaways. What are some of the more minor takeaways that you would? Is there anything that we missed discussing in this that you?
Well, honestly, this book is actually indirectly about immigration.
And how
it's about internal immigration within a country, still regional immigration, but it's still an immigration story, right? It's showing how the South Appalachian culture was imported into the Midwest. And when you look at the Midwest today, I would argue it's had a very negative impact.
And a lot of that has to do with the fact that the assimilation never occurred. There was never.
When you read between the lines of this book, right, you'll see that we imported to the Midwest the go-getters.
Yep.
The seeking better opportunity families, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, these families, when it came to their children, like they still brought the cultural rot problems of the fighting and the honor code system and a bunch of nonsense that just did not compute with Western civilization, like Midwest civilization, right? And it's epitomized by the fact that that store owner is shocked when they just go in there and they start destroying shit because he's like, yo, get out because you might break this toy. All right, like that story alone epitomizes the culture conflict. And then he also makes a valid point about one thing. And a lot of things that are described as the racism in the Midwest are probably actually more so culture issues than racism.
Because when you stick two distinct cultures next to each other and you don't make any headway in assimilating those cultures, the best parts of them together, you're going to end up with two distinct groups in an area that don't get along.
It's beyond that, though, Chris. The thing you got to remember is that the Black migration to the Midwest for jobs happened prior to the hillbilly migration.
Yeah.
So a lot of the Black Southerners went up there first with the same hillbilly-esque culture behaviors. And that built you could say, racism perspective, I guess. Where
I'm just hearing a lot of negatives about the South coming out of your mouth.
Oh, I despise the South, Chris. So no, but what you get is a lot of things. We go back to redlining, all these things that are described as racism. And the reality, when he writes this book and he describes that, like, culturally, the hillbillies, when they came up from Southern Appalachia, Kentucky, all that, experienced a lot of the same disdain because they brought a lot of the same cultural behaviors from the South, but they also challenged the Midwest white perspective of what it meant to be white versus Black. Because Black people brought the first exposure to that Southern mentality, the Appalachian Southern mentality.
The earliest immigrants during and after the Civil War.
Yeah. And then the hillbillies brought it up as white people too. And
so what you're saying is the Southern culture was imported.
Mm-hmm.
And that Southern culture and the Northern cultures didn't really mix very well.
Not at all.
And instead, it created a lot of Northern-Southern segregation.
Yep.
Because the communities that did not assimilate in the best ways possible turned into two distinct groups, neither of which would concede their culture to the other.
And also, I think it's important. As a person with some Scots-Irish heritage, that's like the least hillbilly side of my family. I just got to say it. Like, not all Scots-Irish were effing hillbillies, okay?
But the Appalachian ones.
I think it's important to know that there's very distinct groups that came from Scotland and Ireland to America. Scotland is and has been one of the original birthplaces to the Enlightenment. The colleges in Glasgow and Edinburgh.
I could care less about that.
Bro, the colleges in Edinburgh and Glasgow were extremely important locations for the Enlightenment. There is a highly learned version of Scotland. And the sad reality is, this is a reality, Appalachian Mountains did not get the Scots-Irish that were going for a new home to be better than Scotland. They went there because it reminded them of frickin' Scotland.
Or they went there because of potato famines.
Or the potato famines. They didn't leave to better themselves per se when they went to Appalachia.
I mean, I think that the original ones probably did. They were like, better life for our family.
And conflict. They brought all that nonsense. You didn't get the Enlightenment university grads and
I give zero credence to the Enlightenment as being a good thing.
That's because you're Catholic. Get out of here. No, but seriously, Adam Smith.
You want to talk about problems?
Oh, hey, Adam Smith.
Adam Smith.
Adam Smith. Wealth of Nations. Do you hate him? Do you think that's a terrible concept?
I don't know anything about him.
It's a product of that same university system, dude.
I would have to look that one up. I don't know enough about
Wealth of Nations, the entire basis of capitalism?
Nope. Never read it.
Ignorant piece of crap over here.
Cough, cough, something about the papacy, cough, cough. Anyways,
all I'm saying is what you got was...
What you're saying is you're not getting the cream of the crop in Appalachia coming over from Scott's Irish. That's what you're trying to say.
You're getting clan mentality. You're getting tribal clan mentality. You're bringing it to a society that's industrialized. Right? You're importing clan life, in a tribal clan life, into an industrialized first world nation.
You're bringing the barbarians to Rome.
Yeah. And then you're shocked. You're shocked when they behave violently. You're shocked when they don't behave in the same civilized manner because you can't assimilate that many people.
You're talking about the Vikings before they became Yorkers.
Yeah, I'm talking, you literally just imported third world into first world. And when your cities eventually lack the abundance and mindset that created the location as prosperity, you're then shocked when they turn into crappy cities and hollow out, and then they turn into like a weird, I don't even know how you would describe them anymore. I guess they're called Rust Belt, but they're just poverty with a lot of criminal activity that would whatever. You're shocked, and I don't know why people are shocked. After reading this, I'm not shocked. It makes perfect sense why these cities collapsed. It makes perfect sense to me.
I did like how if you read some of the reviews on this, it's like J.D. Vance described a culture that didn't want to be described.
Yeah. And something that the Midwest probably regretted importing.
Maybe. Depending on where you're at, sure. The other thing that we didn't really talk about is, I thought this was more funny than it was anything we can learn from, but like when he goes and visits his dad and he discovers his dad's essentially a dispensationalist and he believes in like the rapture and everything else. And it's like, oh my goodness. And then he's like trying to like figure out how that culture matches the culture he grew up in. And that's a really oddball.
He has an interesting situation. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I would like to point out, though, I mentioned it before. Everyone in here is so high time preference.
Yeah.
Their time preference is like, they got to have it now. They got to do like, there's so much.
There's a whole story about him wanting that doll thing that came out the year.
No,
says Mom and Lindsay. He didn't want it. His parents
did. He didn't want the effing doll. His mom wanted the doll because that's what makes a perfect Christmas for the kid.
Yeah.
Not once does a single person in this story think long term, except for maybe Uncle Jimmy.
Well, and Mama, when she takes care of JD.
Even she struggled with it. But yes.
She got it by the end.
By the end. Also, despite all the loyalty to family that these mother effers claim to have, it rarely came with stability.
Yeah.
And that's the shocking thing to me, because they spout constantly, the hillbillies in the story spout constantly about loyalty to family, yet they're constantly tearing each other down.
You have to watch the movie. You really do.
You'll
get so much more angry after watching the movie.
What I'm saying is, he's like, oh, this family's weird. there's no conflict. That's
yeah, but that's more of a like he's saying like this is actually a good thing because it allows.
No, I know it's a good thing. I'm
Yeah,
saying,
okay.
But you talk about loyalty to family, yet y'all are ready to slit each other's freaking throats every 2 seconds when one thing goes wrong. Like, where's the loyalty and goodwill to your family member? You emotionally stunted imbeciles. I'm sorry. Like, I have family members who are emotionally stunted too when it comes to reacting extremely volatile. I understand it in the sense that I despise it.
Oh gosh. All right. Well, on that note,
No. I'm just saying. No, there's more. There's more.
Okay.
He does talk about a learned helplessness, which breeds hopelessness.
It does.
And that
it does.
causes
That's true.
much of the problems within their community.
I'll agree with that. I think that learned victimhood can only lead you to victimhood.
Yeah.
Because there's no upward mobility in victimhood, period.
The second you accept that you have no agency is when you have no agency. Exactly. You cause yourself to have none because you just accept it.
There was a really good discussion in this book about how despite your upbringing, there's always the opportunity for the individual to self-recognize and avoid the future that is set out for you. You can always find a different way, no matter what the upbringing is. Now, obviously,
the future is what you make it.
The person who says I won't and the person who says I will are both right.
Chris, at the end of the day, the future is what you make of it.
Right. So if you say you can't, you won't. And if you say you can, you might.
If you don't try to improve things, things will never improve.
Exactly.
If you don't take control of your life, you'll have no control over your life.
If you don't have self-agency, you won't make it.
It's a blissful excuse for a dumbass to say that they had no control over their actions. What, Chris? What?
You just had to throw another profane term into our YouTube algorithm to kill the stream.
Of course, because nothing annoys me more than. Okay, I'm sorry. I apologize to the audience. Reading this, I recognize certain aspects of certain members of my family that I do despise their mindset because I am the polar freaking opposite of it, just through my own nature of observation. And it's one of those things where you see people be like, oh, this happened to me. I don't know why it always happens to me. These people suck.
Look, I'm just gonna throw out examples with no names just to keep people safe. But I've got two sections of family that are wildly different. There's a section of the family that immigrated early in the last century that had a thriving business, successful, and it survived the Great Depression, even made it through all kinds of things. And then when the economy pivoted, so did they, and they got out of that business and switched to a new one, and they're doing just fine. There's another part of my family that's woe is me, never does what they should do. And that part of my family didn't survive any of the things, and they're still having problems. And so like, it's clear to me that a family with self-agency, with self-preservation, that watches trends and does what they should will survive these things.
Well, I'll put it this way. I have one side of the family that has always cared about education and has kind of always been overall well-to-do because of their own agency and just working a certain way. And then I have another side that's a lot more chaotic. And I won't get into how chaotic. But it's to the point that the level of interaction I had with that side of the family significantly smaller. Yeah.
So, anyways,
not
definitely
as crazy as JD Vance is, but boy, oh boy, we got some crazy stories on that side of that family. And yeah, no, I have a much lower tolerance than JD Vance does for that shit within the family. I gotta say. So
anyway, is there anything else that we should talk about now before we close this thing out? We're almost at an hour and a half, so
I know we went long. I mean, okay, we'll have to just say it, right? The white working class community does suffer from one thing, and that is that it's never popular for someone to truly say that they're not privileged. And they get zero resources overall, given the trend towards diversity and DEI type shit. Maybe not as much in America, but that's definitely a huge issue in places like England, where there's zero resources put to that group. The working class.
Are you saying like the working class who's out of a job and needs help?
Or no, the children of working class. They perform on average pretty bad at school. And the performance of that has always been under cared about as far as putting resources to helping them do better. And it's not necessarily working class in general, it's working class boys, white boys. They get zero resources because they're just labeled as
problems.
Privileged because they're white men. There's not any program that wants to focus on them.
I think one of the biggest failures of the government stepping in to help people is a lot of the factors they use have nothing to do with financial well-being.
They've used race instead of financials.
And I think financial well-being is the biggest issue in families.
The fact that they racialized assistance is probably the biggest problem, because your means is by far a bigger factor than...
It's exactly the same issue as the Section 8 housing next to the rich housing. It's like when you have such a disparity between two groups of people in financial well-being, there's going to be problems. And then the other thing that I thought was interesting, I forgot about this till just now. The public school system, and I don't know about other countries, but for sure in America, is very female focused.
Oh, it is. No, that's why I said white men.
And so when you have a system that is geared for women, it's no surprise when the males have a hard time with it.
Well, that's also why more women are going to college now versus men.
Because the whole system, it's sitting at a desk for 8 hours a day is just not something that young boys can do easily without some kind of discipline.
The system is also hyping up women way more. That's what it's put its focus on. It almost makes it through advertising, where college does not seem like it's meant for some of those young boys anymore, and that's part of the problem. And also, I think it's one of those things too, where what we're talking about is like, I feel like even the Black community should recognize that when it comes to certain resentments that some communities have, like maybe working class white families have, is that these people don't come from privileged locations or backgrounds at all. But the ability for them to get assistance can be pretty hard. They're not getting a lot of the same, like when we're talking about oh, what's the word, Chris? What's the word? Affirmative action in certain acceptances and stuff.
Didn't that just go away? I could be wrong. I thought that
no, but in
legally
the
was shot
past,
down.
like
But yes,
the
in the past,
resentment over that, it also depends on the college, dude. Some places still they find workarounds.
no, I'm just saying like the actual act itself.
Yeah.
I thought was done away with. I could be wrong.
But like the concept of that existing for as long as it did was something very resentable by the poor communities like that. I mean, I don't know, man. It's kind of twisted, but at the same time, it's just like, yeah, when the only thing, when someone who could be black and clearly middle class is beating out somebody who's white and poor, there's resentment that's going to build there just because, like, I mean,
really, assistance in general should be merit based.
Yeah.
Period. End of story. And actually, I think Morgan Freeman, if you listen to some of the things he's talked about on TV and interviews, like it really resonates with a lot of people, the ideas he's been presenting.
I mean, it has to be merit-based because that's the only way that you convince people of all socioeconomic levels that their hard work will get them up the ladder.
Well, I mean, look at the whole reason the Vance family moves to Middletown, Ohio, is to have a chance to prove their merit working this job. And then hopefully that merit will translate to stronger, better families. At least that's what the idea was with uprooting from Jackson and moving to Middletown. They wanted better for their family. They wanted their family to prove their merit, to do the things that the richer families in that area did, so that they could be just like them, at least from a financial well-being perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the bulk of people who move their family is you want better for your family. You want to be better. So you move. And then you hope that something will take and stay with your family. Unfortunately, that's not always how it works.
There was one thing too that I don't think he's aware of per se, but the acceleration for the Midwest collapse too is heavily tied to the Great Recession. But it's highly underrated how devastating the Great Recession was.
You're talking about 08?
Huh?
You're talking about 08 or the
08.
Okay.
08. Not because of the recession itself per se, but with the way that the stimulus occurred afterwards.
God, that was terrible. It was one of the worst things.
The way the stimulus was executed, you saw a huge transfer of wealth from the Midwest specifically to East Coast, West Coast locations.
Yeah.
Like the communities on the West Coast and East Coast had ended up receiving way more of that stimulus money. And what you ended up doing was dramatically devaluating everything people had in their bank accounts throughout the Midwest and just giving it to the more asset-rich coastal regions. That wasn't a good policy at all. It really accelerated that gap. You still to this day will see the political divide based on wealth of counties, because the counties used to be party-wise evenly split wealth-wise, and since 2008 that shifted partly because of the party in power, but also regions that got more money. So it's one of those things where there is a level of resentment tied directly to 2008's response. And I think
to be fair, his book doesn't have a lot to do with that.
It doesn't. And what I'm saying is that he does touch a little bit on like, 2008 accelerated the decline. But I don't know if he necessarily realizes how much it accelerated it and exasperated the elitism of the coast versus the Midwest that like he experiences when he finally goes to college in Yale. I don't think he truly necessarily factors that in if he knows about it. That's talked about in other books, but
yeah, and we could get into the whole like it's better to be lucky or privileged than it is to be working hard thing.
Well, he does talk about networking. There was that. It's important
it's
to
almost
network,
more
folks.
important who you know than what you know.
Yeah.
And there's that whole conversation which has been done over and over and over for hundreds of years.
I mean, I think it's inherently understood. Maybe not, but
it depends on who you are and where you're from. But yeah,
knowing somebody who's somewhere already who can give a good like firsthand account of you is going to put you ahead of the game simply because that person now has a trusted source, third-party view of you. That's it. That's it. And in a world where we've talked about Dunbar's number in the past,
Avogadro's number. No, I'm just kidding.
But with Dunbar's number and all that, we've talked about it in the past. Having somebody within their circle that can vouch for you is such a powerful thing of trust. Like it builds an inherent, like, instant trust factor that what someone said about you is true because they know this person, they trust this person, and that person knows you, trusts you. Boom, that person now has a reason to trust you. So having that mutual connection is extremely important.
All right, why don't we get into rating this book? Because I think this is an extremely hard book to rate.
Oh, it is.
Because I think the book is very good because it really shows you the area he came from, the perseverance, the family impact. It's well written, and the narration works extremely well with this book. So, like, from a quality standpoint, you're getting like a good eye into J.D. Vance's life.
Okay, I'll say this. Rating it purely on his writing ability, it is a 4 out of 5. It's well written, extremely well written. Rating
you just don't like his ideas.
No, rating it from a love for hillbillies. Oh, I hate hillbilly. I hate that hillbilly culture so.
Oh my goodness.
Much. It's a 1 out of 5. Just kidding. Rating the hillbilly culture. It's a 1 out of 5, Chris.
Yeah, but you're not rating that. You're rating the book.
I know. I said it's a 4 out of 5. I just had to rate the hillbilly culture 1 out of 5. Get out of the Midwest.
I don't know. I'm a little more nostalgic for the hillbilly culture than you are.
I said already. They have one thing that's redemptive: extended families.
Anyway,
and being there for each other. Extended families being there for each other. But at the same time, they're their own worst enemy, Chris. So
you're not wrong about that.
So maybe it's better if they're not there for each other. I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
It's so dang hard to tell.
I'm gonna agree with you. It's a 4 pushing a 5. And if you get a chance to watch the Hillbilly Elegy movie, it's so well done. I don't often like give glowing ratings to movies, but man, like converting this into a intelligible, watchable movie is not easy, and they did a good job with it. The only thing I wish they had done more of is they spent most of the time in the first 2/3 of the book, and they spend almost no time in the last third. Like him going to the military is a blip on the screen. Him going to OSU is a blip on the screen. Him going to Yale is a blip.
All I know is that he's lucky to even be born.
Okay, on that note.
No, I mean, given the story of how volatile his grandparents.
You're just so angry about that pharmacy.
I am. If that was my pharmacy, goodness gracious, I'm getting the shotgun out, Chris. Don't destroy my property.
Well, so we're both giving it a 4.
Yeah.
Differing views on the hillbilly culture. But
differing. Did
slightly.
They enrich the Midwest, Chris?
I'm just saying.
Did they enrich it?
I have a little more nostalgia for the hillbilly culture than
Did
you
they
do.
enrich it, Chris?
Okay, let's move on from this.
No, that's a yes or no, Chris. Did they?
Depending on where they are, yes. Depending on the way they are, no.
That's a terrible.
It enriched me. So, you know.
Bro, we're both talking from two families that have some like questionable halves of the family here. Does it enrich the family? You can divorce the fact that your roots come from questionable side of the tree to say does the culture enrich the community?
I'm not walking down this path with you again for another hour. Okay, but what's up next week? What are we doing? Are we doing Seneca or the Sword and Serpent?
Sword and Serpent. I thought we need to finally review that before I forget everything I read.
All right. Well, one or the other will happen next week. It'll either be the Seneca book, next 5 letters, or it'll be Sword and Serpent. I don't remember what we agreed upon, but we'll figure it out.
Sword and Serpent because this was just added in.
If I finish it, by next Wednesday, we can do that one next Wednesday. I looked at when I last read it. It was sometime in 2023. So
okay, fine.
I need to catch up on it.
You'll take so long, I have to reread it. So
no, I could probably have it read by next week. We'll see.
Okay. But yeah, 4 out of 5, folks. We recommend you read it. It'll give you a great insight into the history and backstory of J.D. Vance, Donald Trump's vice president choice. So
for his ticket, yep.
For his ticket. So we'll see. He
Make
might
America
actually
hillbilly
be the VP.
again.
Who knows?
Make America hillbilly again.
Never.
Sorry. I had to throw it in there. Anyways, yeah, you're basically saying he's the anti-thing to the slogan that Trump likes to use.
Yeah, basically.
Get the hillbillies out is what you're saying.
Unless they join the Marines.
Make American Marines again.
Marines again, please. Just send them
Mama. It'll be Mama.
Yeah. Mama. See, that's perfect for them. They can understand that.
Oh my goodness. All right. As always, I'm Chris.
And I'm Andrew.
And we'll see you guys on the next episode of
Printed and Pressed. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.